So yeah, wow, I really have no way to better express how shocked and overwhelmed, in a good way, I was by everyone's reaction to me yammering on about so many things related to mythology and epic the musical. I also want to thank a lot of people who let me know that there'd apparently been some shenanigans that happened between the creator and the studio, I believe, in which they had recorded the first two of the sagas. And so what I was listening to was kind of an out-of-date version. And so I made an effort to try and find more recent recordings. Someone actually gave me the date for when they re-released the first two sagas. That was supremely helpful. I want to thank you. I also took in consideration what a lot of people were saying about, like, you know, please consider the animatics, use his live stream as it gives you accurate lyrics. It does have some of the animatics that I guess the creator had commissioned himself. I am going to still try to currently avoid the animatics as much as I can. Again, I understand this is a concept album. I understand that also it's being released in the way that it is, and so as opposed to having, say, a script that would have like stage directions on it, the creator went for the route of getting the animatics because that is a way to better visually represent what he's trying to get across. I completely understand that. I still am someone who is very distracted by visuals and do want to keep down the visual content as much as possible, if only because, like, if there were, say, a script, or if he had released like lyric videos that had stage directions on them, I would rather actually look at that, because again, I'm trying to go by the music and the text, and ADHD brain, the neurospiciness gets in there and I get very distracted and it derails me from what I'm trying to do, which is look at it in a slightly more textual analysis. But I also do just want to start by saying thank you so much for honestly a lot of the great enthusiasm that I saw. It was my face when I opened my phone and saw the number of notifications I had for comments was overwhelming in a good way that I hadn't anticipated. And yeah, so I want to say thank you. I'll also say that while I am trying to go like song by song, I can't guarantee that I'll always have like one song that will make up like 20 minutes worth of me yammering about mythology. Some of the songs might not do that. I can anticipate probably that there's a lot of the arias or the solo songs by characters that are much more about delving into character and aren't moving the story along in the way that The Horse and the Infant does. So The Horse and the Infant is about like setting the stage and introducing you at least to Odysseus, some of the other heroes of ancient Greece, but they don't really, well, Menelaus pops back up very literally in the Odyssey, but some of the others not so important in the context of Odysseus's journey, but we're laying the groundwork. I mean, I'm assuming that's what the entirety of this first saga is really about, laying framework and foundation. And Just a Man, which I'm going to wager is Odysseus having to reconcile the I'm gonna have to yeet Astyanax off the Trojan walls, which is usually traditionally how Astyanax is depicted as being killed. He is thrown from the walls of Troy, which may not provide me too much to talk about, like, tons of myth info-wise, but we'll see. So, my way of saying videos that I make in future may focus on only one song, may focus on multiple songs. I'm gonna try and keep them somewhere between, like, 20-ish something minutes, going over a 30-minute mark. I don't even know if I could hold all of you for that long. No, trust me. Even I don't know if I could listen to myself for that long, and clearly I have no problem listening to myself talk. That being said, let's go into Just a Man. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to Jorge or Jay's. Somebody said he's got a lot of nicknames. I'll probably rotate between those two. I've gone to his channel. He has official concept album. He has all of the songs listed out here. I don't know if they're lyric videos, which is a slight problem for me, but we shall do our best and we shall see. We'll try this way. The next song after Just a Man is called Full Speed Ahead, so we'll see how Just a Man goes and go from there. So you can see I did press it. This guitar, this plucking instrument is very nice.
I look into your eyes and I think back to the sun
Yeah, so it's wild to think that, I'm gonna pause. It's wild to think that by this point, Telemachus would be 10 years old, but in Odysseus's mind, he's still an infant because he hasn't seen him since he left, and Telemachus was an infant when he left. So there's an interesting almost dissonance here where we get Odysseus looking at baby Astyanax and this thing that he has to do and seeing Telemachus, even though by this point Telemachus doesn't look like that anymore. He doesn't know what Telemachus even looks like, but to him he's still in his head seeing Telemachus as the baby that he left behind, which it's really beautiful. And I like that there is this kind of dissonance for us, the listener. I would suppose not so much, I would think, for Odysseus, because he has no frame of reference of what Telemachus looks like anymore.
These actions haunt my days. Every man I've slain is the price I pay. Endless pain. Close your eyes and spare yourself the view. How could I hurt you?
Oh, I guess it's a string instrument. I almost thought it was a brass in the back. That line is beautiful. Close your eyes, spare yourself the view. How could I hurt you? What I like about that line, I mean, this is meant to be him singing, I think in many ways, to Astyanax, who I'm assuming he's holding. He has not yet thrown him off the walls. But that line, close your eyes, spare yourself the view. Astyanax is a baby. He's not going to understand what's going on. Odysseus does, though. That line, it sounds almost like it's speaking to Odysseus as much as it is to Astyanax. Like, don't think about this thing you have to do. I mean, here he is in the position of having to willingly kill an infant, when in the past, part of the way he tried to get out of the Trojan War, because he didn't want to go, he had, as I'd said in the previous video, he kind of got roped into an agreement because he was one of the many suitors who had come to court Helen. He saw how many people were there, and he basically changed his mind. He said, you know what? I like Penelope. No one's fighting for Penelope. I'm gonna go for her. I don't really want to be involved, but fine, okay, I'll sign this. Sign, esoterically. I'll join this pact that if somebody ever steals Helen, I will join the campaign to bring her back. And so when he realized, oh shit, Helen's been stolen, I'm gonna have to go to war, but I don't want to. Like, I want to chill out here on my island, Ithaca. And so he decided to pretend to be crazy and was like sowing his seeds, his fields with the plow, like running it backwards and doing it in all these ways where it would actually kind of ruin the land. It wouldn't do anything. And these emissaries of Agamemnon and Menelaus, unfortunately, are like, yeah, we've been told you're really smart. So let's really see if you're crazy. And what they did was basically leave baby Telemachus in the field so that Odysseus, if he were to truly be crazy, would run over his son and kill him. And that's what gave him away. So it's interesting to think of, like, there's a history of something like that. And now he's actually got to kill an infant, and he's been told by Zeus, this is the will of Zeus, or the will of the gods. It's the will of Zeus. He kind of can do the royal we thing. And you have to do this, or this kid will come back and kill you. And when Odysseus, by this point, seeing for him what he thinks is this finish line, he can go home. And it's the heat of battle. It is the sack of Troy. The sack of Troy was supremely violent. I mean, sacking of a city in an instance like this, it would be violent. It was not a place you wanted to be around. The only thing they really had to be careful of, the Greeks that is, would be what they did in temples, because, well, for the sake of, like, worship, the Trojans and the Greeks were worshiping the same gods. If you happen to ever read the Iliad by Homer, which again is a kind of snapshot of the last year of Troy, the gods are there as characters. They're taking sides because they might have descendants on either side and how they feel about certain things. And so when you went to sack a city, and in the sack of Troy, it was, you kind of get, in a way, carte blanche to do whatever you want to whoever you find and whatever you find. But when you were dealing with temples, you had to be supremely careful, because that is on Earth, in a way, not off Olympus. It is still kind of considered the realm or the house of a god or a goddess. So if you messed around in there, you could get in a lot of trouble.
2,000 years later.
That being said, here he is having to do something like yeet a baby off the walls of Troy. again, we'll note that I like this stringed instrument we have that I'm musically probably going to start associating with Odysseus. Just from my knowledge and history with musicals and music, it's usually you'll take an instrument or a leitmotif. Is it leitmotif? I can't remember how it's spelled, so it's either leitmotif or leitmotif, and you'll start associating it with like a character or a situation or something. And it seems like we're laying, again, this is all very foundational, laying framework and groundwork here.
I'm just a man who's trying to go home, even after all the years away from what I've known. I'm just a man who's fighting for his life. Deep down I would trade the world to see my son and
He really
wife.
would.
I'm just a
He absolutely would.
But when does a comet become a meteor? When does a candle become a blaze? When does a man become a monster? When does a ripple become a tidal wave? When does the reason become the blame? When does a man become a monster?
Okay, we're having someone come in, I'm assuming probably to repeat those lines. Ooh, great dialogue. This is great because a lot of people, I sound like such a dick. I think a lot of surface level interpretations of the Odyssey pretty much deal on the idea that the Odyssey is just a journey around space. Like, he travels around, very literally. The Odyssey is as much a story of Odysseus going on physical travels as it is him having an inner journey, an emotional journey, a moral journey. It's, I mean, again, the moral journey, if you will, is very much in the context of the world he is from, so the Hellenic values and the like. So maybe we don't see it as much as a moral journey at times because different morals. O tempora, o mores.
Oh God, no. Nope, we're not going into Cicero. That's a completely different culture.
But I like that we're doing this, like, when does a comet become a meteor? When does a candle become a blaze? When, and this idea of when does a man become a monster? That's so interesting, especially because Odysseus is going to encounter a lot of monsters on his journey. He even hits some of like the big ones in mythology where they are in multiple myths. He's got some that are a little specific, kind of relate to him, but he does hit some where it's just like, you appear in multiple myths. You are like a known established Greek monster. But this is lovely, and I like the shift musically, it's just him and this baby, that beautiful, again, I'm like guitar-like instrument in the back, and then we're bringing in these like, this darker kind of like, oh God, I'm gonna have to do this. What does that mean for the future? That's also a good thing that Odysseus would think about. Again, he is noted as being very smart. It is sort of like his epithet. Wise Odysseus, wily Odysseus, crafty Odysseus. Like, he's like, his brain moving all the time. He would be thinking about all these things. It's part of why Athena like really digs him. He is noted to be one of Athena's kind of favorites because he is so bright. In addition to like baseline being a really good warrior. That's Greek hero kind of a baseline. You have to be a warrior. You have to be accustomed to violence. But even this is this is violence on a different level, killing of an infant. In myths, a lot of the times you'll see when like an infant needs to be killed, the person who has to do it can't do it. They have to like abandon it somewhere. Case in point, Oedipus Tyrannus, or Oedipus Rex is probably what most people know that play as. I mean, he was supposed to be killed and he wasn't. So this will be, oh man. I like this sort of Greek chorus we have going on behind him. I'm imagining it's like meant the soldiers standing in, it's like a Greek chorus behind him while he's doing this terrible thing.
I'm just a man.
Okay, so that's Just a Man. This is Odysseus' really first like aria, essentially his kind of solo song. And if you think in the tradition of, say, like opera, you have recitative and arias. Recitative is like conversation, or it's stuff that drives the story forward, and then you get an aria, which is usually one character coming out to sing their song, and it doesn't usually move the plot forward. It's about exploring the character and often their emotions, which Just a Man very much does. Again, I like this idea that because we have put the burden of killing Astyanax on Odysseus, as opposed to usually more traditionally Neoptolemus, he's having a deep inner conflict about it. We're starting the character in a very physical conflict, and then bringing in also a deep emotional conflict. What's also interesting about this from a structure standpoint is you've got the seeming ending of the external conflict. This is the sack of Troy. The Trojan War is ending. The likelihood of the Greeks not succeeding in the sack of Troy is like slim to none. Because essentially with the walled city, once you get inside the gate, you're in. So now that we have this seeming end of this thing that Odysseus has been a part of for 10 years, unable to go home, the only time that Odysseus really is known to have left, in a way, the Trojan War is when he had to go get a very specific hero. And that was the hero of Philoctetes, who, yes, had been a kind of companion of Heracles and had Heracles' bow and arrow. And even though Odysseus is known to be a good archer, we will get to that later. Much, much later. Because Philoctetes had the bow and arrow of Heracles, you needed him. Those arrows were important. They were dipped in the poison of the Hydra or the Hydra, and so would kill you. Like, even if they don't get a fatal shot off, you dead. That shit poisonous.
Shit gonna kill you.
And what had happened was Philoctetes had actually gotten injured on the way to Troy, and like his wounds started becoming infected, and it smelled so bad they just like left him on an island and dipped. But Odysseus got told, if you want to take down Paris, who is kind of the last person you sort of need to take down here, especially after the death of Achilles, you need to get Philoctetes. Like, he's the one who's going to kill Paris. So he went, he got Philoctetes, he brought him back, Philoctetes killed Paris, and then we move on to the Trojan horse, and inevitably, as we are here, the sack of Troy, or of the sack of Ilium, which was the other name for Troy, hence the Iliad, a story of Troy. So we have this external conflict that's seemingly finally coming to an end. But now a new conflict is going to be created of, I killed a baby. And no matter how much Odysseus will be able, in the terms of myth and in the terms of the time period, really be able to completely justify what he's doing. It's not something that's so out of line, especially the reasons that Zeus gives in The Horse and the Infant are absolutely like not a joke. Odysseus, I can sense, is probably going to have a hard time with this. And Odysseus as a character, when you meet him in the Odyssey, now we have the benefit, especially of meeting him 20 years after the start of the Trojan War. And while the death of Astyanax is not a feature of the Odyssey, nor even of his character in the Odyssey, he is a man who is haunted by things that he has seen and experienced. Not always necessarily by things that he's done, though, which is a crucial point of Odysseus. He is a very flawed character. One of the reasons I love the Greek heroes, and if I were to think of like the two Greek epic poems, Iliad and Odyssey, and compare it to, say, the Aeneid by Virgil, which is a Roman epic, Odysseus and Achilles are way more interesting because they are so flawed. Like, Aeneas' big flaw is that he's too good. He's boring as shit. Take it from somebody who had to translate the Aeneid.
He's boring.
The cool thing about the Greek heroes is that they are very flawed. They are messy as... Like, that's their thing. They're messy. When you study Greek tragedy, the famous, like, word that gets brought up is hamartia or hamartia, which means literally, like, fatal flaw. In the tragedies, the hero always has a flaw that is so overwhelming about his character that it causes his downfall. I'm sure we will see in the case of Odysseus, he's kind of arrogant. The unfortunate thing is that he knows he's smart. Like, he is so smart, but he knows it, and he gets a little arrogant about it. And at times, he also has a tendency, especially in the Odyssey, to kind of constantly put the blame on others. Unfortunately, because we are getting it from Odysseus' perspective, we don't know whether that's true or not, necessarily. But he does like to constantly put the blame on others, and he's not always the best at self-reflecting. It takes extremes to get Odysseus to in any way... Bless you, Peg! To in any way self-reflect. But I like this start to the character. Again, because we are really outside the realm of the Odyssey right now. It's nice to see that there's this thought to, okay, this external conflict is ending. Let's start the brewing of an internal conflict. Let's have him really have to reconcile what he's doing, which would be hard for a guy who's seeing an infant and seeing his son, even though his son doesn't even look like that anymore. Okay, I will say that in terms of, I didn't have the lyrics, but did perfectly well. The diction of the singers is very clear, very nice, very easy to tell. For now, I'm going to keep going this way. Again, we will see how that changes potentially in future songs. If I need to pull up a lyrics, find a live stream, find something. I do kind of wish this had captions or the like that I could use as lyrics, but alas. So let's go full speed ahead.